Do you find yourself, as you get older, looking back and thinking about things, life lessons that you have learned, and things that you kind of wish you knew when you were younger? Where here today are 4 new things that I wished I had learned when I was younger. Number 1, don't help too much. That may sound a bit callous and cruel at first, but it is a good, important lesson not to get too involved in someone else's life and to know that you can help a little bit from a distance. You want to be able to help, whether it's physical, with physical things or monetary things, or maybe even emotional support. But basically, you don't want to get so enwrapped in someone else's problems that you're going past someone else's boundaries, which isn't good. We do need personal boundaries. People need their personal space. And I know myself, I have been at times a bit like that, where I thought I could rush in and help other people and not take over, but use maybe some of my skills and abilities toward helping them, but perhaps going beyond those boundaries too much. And another thing that can happen is you can actually cause a dependency, and people want to be helped. They do. I know I want help sometimes, or have wanted help, but the thing I want most is to be self-dependent, to be independent, to be able to solve the problem on my own. But sometimes we do need a leg up, and it's okay to do a little bit, but one thing I learned is don't help too much. Another thing, number 2, is that work friends aren't really true friends. They're a type of friend, but a work friend you will come to think of as someone close because you see them every day, and perhaps now that you're in retirement or that you're in your 60s or 50s or 60s, late 60s, that you do realize now that as you've maybe retired, semi-retired, and you're not around those people so much, they don't come calling after you. And you could say, well, you don't go calling after them. But I find that even if a person does call them up and say, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee, we haven't seen you in a while, maybe a year or so, maybe 2 years, it does seem almost odd to them because they have their own life. They're okay with saying happy birthday on Facebook or whatever, but they really don't want to get too involved in your life because they know that they're just work friends. And sometimes work friends were actually your competition and you didn't even really know it, you know? They were vying for the same jobs, the same promotions, the same pay raises. And even though they can be nice and kind, in some ways they were your competitor. So don't expect people to be your friend after retirement or after you have to leave a job. I have personally experienced that. And it's not that they aren't nice people, and we've had brief contact maybe on Facebook Messenger when something important comes up. But by and large, they really have their own lives, as so do I. So work friends aren't your real friends. And maybe knowing that now while you're still working, while you're still young, will help in some way. Number 3, a life pointer is to stay focused. Now, my father always thought that I jumped around from one thing to another. And perhaps it's true. I probably did. I found it hard. Maybe I do suffer from some adult ADHD. Back then, it wasn't even a thing. But I do find myself going from one thing to the other. But all the experts say the more focused you are on something, the more successful you'll be. I guess it all depends on how you define life. I would say that you should be able to be open to other areas and things and interests that you can explore, but perhaps pick one to focus on the most. So stay focused. Don't wander all over the place on different ideas and different plans. And because if you spread yourself too thin, what's going to happen is you're not going to get any of those things done. And It doesn't seem to work in business, and it doesn't seem to work in life if you focused on too many things. So just try to stay focused. Be the driver of the car. You do know that the driver of the life car doesn't really get to see around all that much because he or she has to focus on the road, on the driving. However, once in a while, be the passenger so you can look out those windows, enjoy the scenery, and see what all the other options that are out there. Number 4 is something I've learned my whole life, and maybe this has to go with looking for help, is that even if you go for professional help, and I'm not trying to discourage you from going for professional help, but any kind of counseling or any kind of thing where you need that help, you will find that people will give you help based on their own life experiences. So the advice that you're going to get, that's what I mean by help, I mean advice, wisdom, is going to be based a lot on someone else's life experiences. For example, I can remember my dad walking into a motorcycle shop once, and I was just young, maybe 16, 17. He's like, "Hey, wouldn't you love to work here?" You know, I was considering what I was going to do the rest of my life. And it's like, "No, Dad, I don't want to work in a motorcycle shop. I'm sorry," or fixing small engines. That's basically what it was. He loved it, so his advice was based on things he loved. And I found that too with my uncles, aunts, everyone you come in contact with. You got to take that advice, you got to weigh it, but their answer is not necessarily your answer. Yes, if you don't eat, you'll die. If you don't get medicine, you'll get sick, or your sick will get worse, but your illness. There are those general things, but specifically like career, love choices, whatever, vocational, they haven't experienced exactly the same thing. So that's not to make an excuse for making bad choices. I'm not saying that. But we do have to keep in mind, and I wish I did when I was younger, more so, that advice comes from people based on those people's personal experiences. What worked for them may not necessarily work for you or I. I think that's all I need to say about that. Just, salt all your inquiries, with that little bit of advice that they are basing it on their own life experiences. Okay, number 5. This is said so many times that it kind of loses its punch effect. But I think you'll agree with me, because most of my audience is in their 60s or late 50s and are retired or semi-retired. You can look at your life now and you can see that life itself for each human being, even if you live to be 82, 85, whatever, or 90, life is very, very, short. It's really short. Once you have that memory that you can look back over, you remember the days as a kid, you remember going to school, you remember going to work, your first job, your first love, whatever, and you do find that when you look back, and then when you look ahead, especially when you're in your 60s and you start seeing people your age, basically cashing it in, and they're no longer alive on this planet, life is very short. But there is a time probably in your teens, or your 20s and early 30s, where you start to think, hey, this is going to go on forever, and I got loads of time. So you can draw the lessons from it, from what you want. But I think as we get older, we do realize that each moment, each day, each ray of sunshine is more and more special, more and more sweet, because it's getting more and more rare, if that's a proper way to say it. It's getting so that those days are not as abundant, and they aren't. And so life will seem very, very short. And my advice to us, to you, to me, is to stop worrying so much about things that don't need to be worried about. And even if you have serious worries, serious life issues, you still can stop for a moment. You can stop for a moment, look around, see life, whatever it is, a cup of coffee, whatever you like to do, and just think to yourself, I'm enjoying this moment. because life is very short. All right, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.